I'm Phil Liggett, and this is The Wheelhouse.
All right, well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Wheelhouse. And in a pretty predictable turn of events, because we're in the middle of the cycling season, it's been a massive week. So we have a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, Joel can't be with us today. I'd love to tell you that he's out adventuring on his bike somewhere. Alas, he's sick, so we're sending all our wishes to him. Good luck, buddy. I hope you feel better for next week. But you know what? I went searching for somebody to fill the very big shoes of Joel. And if I can say so myself, I reckon I've done a pretty good job with who I have found to sit in the chair across from me. I've got someone who is Australian road champion, Olympian, known as the hard man of Australian cycling in the classics, in the days, the one and only Henk Vogels. Henk, welcome to the bunker.
Thank you, Kate. It's my pleasure. Hard man. I don't know if it's so much a hard man anymore, though.
Hard to talk to, hard to get along with.
Yeah, maybe that. Maybe you have to ask my wife that one.
It's so I mean, you're a long-time listener, just first-time guest, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. Well, so you've ridden 6 Grand Tours, 15 Classics. You've been top 10 in Paris-Roubaix and Ghent-Wevelgem. But the stories that you have along the way, honestly, they would fill editions of books. You've got a bit of a new venture now, though, not withdrawn from cycling. What are you up to these days?
Yeah, so now the last 4 years have been director sportive of an Australian pro men's and women's cycling team based on Sunshine Coast. So we've been, when I walked in the door, there was 7 or 8 athletes and not much money, and we've grown it now to 27 athletes. So we've got men's, women's, elite, under 23s, men's and women, and juniors, men and women. So it's pretty massive, and that's the ARA Skip Capital team based on the Sunshine Coast, and we race all around the world now. So apart from when there's a general pandemic happening, but
that kind of puts a dampener on things,
yes,
right?
But that was still good for development at the grassroots level. But it's open slather now. We can get across the borders and race, which we're going to be doing a lot this year of.
Well, and you've already made a massive imprint, not only in Australian cycling, but actually in world cycling. We'll talk about that a little bit later. To kick us off, it's been a massive week. We're in classic season. I'm excited about that. I know that it gets your heart racing as well, Hank. Let's just go through what's happened this week. We had Omloop Het Nieuwsblad for the men and the women. That was the opening weekend. Dylan van Baarle won for the men. Lotte Kopecky took the honours for the women, so Jumbo and SD Works. They doubled up again the next day. Tish Benoot won at KBK for Jumbo, and Lorena Wiebes won at Hageland. I want to ask you about her sprinting and what you think of her a little bit later. Jonas Vingegaard, he's back. How good. I think everybody was wondering whether he would emerge from hiding. He's back with a bang too. He won all 3 stages and the GC in El Gran Camino, and he looked pretty happy along the way. We've got Alaphilippe. Lulu is one of Joel's favourites. Hank, he's back as well. He won in Fornardèche, which is great to see him back. Nearly a year anniversary from his crappy accident last year. And UAE Tour wrapped up. Remco Evenepoel did Evenepoel-y things and took the GC. A little bit unrecognisable, though, in his leader's jersey and not his World Champions jersey. Now, I understand, Hank, is this right? When you're world champion, you can choose to wear the leader's jersey or the world champion's jersey in a race like that?
No, I reckon you've got to wear the leader's jersey.
The leader's. I mean, I think you'd be pretty brave in the UAE to say thank you, Mr. Sheikh, for the lovely jersey, but I'm going to decline the offer and wear my world champion one instead.
Wouldn't that be good, though?
It would be, yeah. That'd be a story.
Hang on, I'm the world champ.
Yeah.
Come on, mate. These things don't grow on trees.
No, exactly. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. And you know what? We're the only Australian weekly cycling podcast. If we want to talk about the Aussies, we're going to do it. No more Remco here for today, Hank. I want to talk about Luke Plapp. He came second behind the world champion at the UAE Tour. And some pretty spectacular rides along the way too. How good is this kid? Plappy, as everybody likes to call him.
Well, Plappy, he's certainly got one of the biggest egos I know around.
You reckon?
No, absolutely. And you've got to have that, right? I mean, look at Robbie McEwen, one of the biggest egos, one of the biggest Palmares. So this kid, you know, I mean, who comes out as an under-23 in the National Road Championships and goes, nah, I'm not riding under-23. I'm winning the elite. Like,
And
he's
does it.
that, and does it, and then backs it up.
Well, it's interesting you say ego because I would say he's one of the nicest young kids that we have. And so I think this is an existence where you can coexist with an ego and be a nice kid. So ego doesn't necessarily mean arrogance.
No,
right?
that's two different words there for sure. I mean, he's got to have a pair of swingers on him to do that.
He just backs himself, doesn't he?
Exactly. So you don't ever hear him hanging shit on anyone. Like, he's a good kid. You're absolutely 100% right. But he knows he is a good bike rider, and he has, you know, he wants to back himself totally. So, I mean, some of the stuff he was doing in the UAE Tour, going for the bonuses, because he totally knew that Remco is another level right now than him, because he's world champion, and he is. And Remco will win the Tour one day, I got no doubt. Or Giro, Vuelta, you know, depends if he gets away from Lefevre. But that's
we've got to talk about that a bit later.
That's a whole nother story. But Luke's he's pretty cluey. So, you know, you saw him getting those time bonuses, and that helped him run second. I mean, he didn't climb with him in the final, but hey, I mean, the kid is exceptional, knows how to ride the crosswinds. He's got a huge time trial on him. He's a classy all-round bike rider. He's just started too. Like, I don't think he knows how good he is yet. You know, he needs a couple of big seasons in Europe to get that real, you know, he needs a couple of grand tours in his legs, which I don't think he's done yet.
No, he's got massive power numbers too, doesn't he? We were talking last week about UAE Tour and just the profile of the riders, and that Plappy throws out these enormous power numbers, and what he can do in the wind is just mind-boggling, and time trials, as you mentioned. But he runs about 8 to 10 kilos heavier than Evenepoel, for example, and 10 kilos over Yates. Is it a case of he's going to have to change himself a little bit if he wants to ride the Grand Tours, or do you think Grand Tours are not what Plapp will be known for, but more the classics? Because he's kind of in between at the moment, right? Where he could go any direction. Yeah,
I think they signed him for Grand Tours. I mean, if you look back and see what Wiggins did from, you know, when he was a pursuiter and then he changed himself into a Tour de France rider, I mean, you know, the weight loss that he encountered to do that was extraordinary, and not many people can do that. I don't think he's got much to lose, Luke, but you can always definitely get skinnier. But I don't think that's the case. I think he just needs to do lots of stage races and do more days of racing and just get that power, as you saw. Well, in my era, big guys can still win Tour de France's, and maybe the science is different. I don't know. Maybe the science is different now, and, you know, the power to weight ratios are different. And
I don't know. I mean, you've got so many youngsters in your team. I think everybody's got to be pretty careful talking about weight, and it's a dangerous game to play, even for mentality, to try and turn them into different kinds of riders. I just want to see that epic engine and those crosswind rides continue. Yeah. It'll give people a lot to cheer for. In your team, are you looking for the Plappies? Like, is that kind of your place in world cycling, that ARA Skip Capital can hand off the Plappies to the pro teams, and you might then be in the background, but you're rubbing your hands together knowing that you've been a big part of the journey? Yeah,
I mean, we're not looking for the next Luke Plapp. I mean, more so for us, we're based on the Sunshine Coast at USC. So really for us, the main thing is mentoring young cyclists. It's not all about results, even though they are the most competitive group ever, and they want to win bike races and they want to go to the World Tour. But for us, that's not what it's about. Us is just teaching them how to do things right. So for us, that's the crux, and, you know, the idea behind ARA Skip Capital. It's about teaching that young lady or that young man, like, this is the right way to do things. You know, if you don't listen, you get left behind. You know, you're learning quickly. You know, we're there to teach them to be adults first, to win races second. So that's massive for us. And, you know, the team was started around so many people having nothing after cycling, and that's horrific for anyone to go through to be the best in the world, Olympic champion, and then, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So half of the athletes are studying too. So for us, a win is if someone gets through university and we teach them to be a good adult. It's a bonus if they go into the World Tour, but we have put some through. So, and we will continue to keep doing that. But that's massive for us. I mean, we wanted to walk away better people from our program after 3 years because we can't. It's not jobs for life. Come in at year 12 and walk away at 23. So, and we haven't had anyone to do that yet. Those 5 years, we haven't had anyone 5 years. It's generally 1 to 3 years, and they move on to different teams.
That's a pretty cool project. You're building good humans. I mean, I always say to people, and you and I, Henk, we've both been through that transition from pro life into real life, and we've found that cliff, and there's been some ups and downs climbing up it, falling off it. So it's pretty cool that you're then helping, the next generation avoid those little pitfalls. You've got Maeve Plouffe in the Women's World Tour this year. I was very pleased to see her join Team DSM, knowing her background and where she's come from, also at university. Like, you're doing a really great job of that. You've had a pretty successful early season so far. I remember last year at Road Nationals, you guys won 6 national titles. A dominant performance, you could call that, given the demographics of your team. This year we saw Isabel Carnes on the world stage at the Tour Down Under, putting the colours out there. The focus might not be on getting them to the World Tour, but you've got some tremendous athletes in your group.
Yeah, this year was 3 gold, 6 silver, 3 bronze at the National Championships. But I mean, we had athletes in all, so 19s, 23s, elites. So for us, it's massive start of the year. Summer cycling is amazing. So, Bay Crits, Nationals, Tour Down Under, Cadell's, Melbourne to Warrnambool, all in a 5-week stretch. So there's a lot of racing to be done, and you're pretty much exhausted by the end of it. The ladies had way more racing than the men's because the World Tour was very hard to get in Tour Down Under, obviously. We couldn't get our men's team in there, but we did have some riders in Cadell's. But yeah, we got lots of really good young talent like Lucinda Stewart. She's going to be a superstar. She doesn't know how good she is. Same with Izzy.
Lauren Bates, got to throw her in there.
Yeah, Lauren Bates. Good name, that one.
Yeah.
And they're all just so young and they're all just trying to work it out. So we're just trying to facilitate that, and hopefully they're racing against the World Tour ladies in 3 years or so.
I love it. It's really cool, actually. It's a privilege to see the athletes on the ground level. And we were talking about Luke Plapp. I remember commentating his first national championships in the Madison. And I remember chatting to him then when he was a 16-year-old kid, like real kid. And so now you see what they're doing internationally, and it's almost like a little bit mind-boggling, like imagining if your kids did it or something. Henk, speaking of talent development, you and I have a few things in common. I think in the Wheelhouse bunker, probably one of those is fairly strong opinions on Mr. Patrick Lefevre, Mr. Quickstep, Mr. whatever you want to call him. You've had a fair bit to do with him over the years. Now, every week, either I upset Belgium with my tweets about him and they get a little bit cranky with me back, or he says something that I just can't walk past. Now, this week what he said is that Jumbo-Visma dominated at the Classics, and he said that's just like Quickstep a few years ago. But the insinuation is that the reason Jumbo are successful is because his team is no longer focusing on the Classics. Is that fair, or is it just standard Lefevre, really no need to say it kind of thing?
It's not much. What he says most of the time is generally not fair, and it's generally based around his ego. And I actually think that he thinks that the team is successful because of him. And he's got a lot of good traits, Patrick, but he puts his foot in it a lot.
So what are his good traits? I mean, he's successful. I'll give him that. Like, he has built loyalty in that team.
He's probably the most successful
really.
Sports director ever. It hurts me to say that, but I mean, I suppose you've got to have a little bit of understanding of how this guy has been around the sport for so long. So let's just go back a little bit before Patrick Lefevre turned on the scene. So there was a couple of massive Dutch teams back in the day before Rabobank, Panasonic, TVM, teams like that, PDM, TVM, Panasonic, and there's a guy by the name of Peter Post, who my dad was really friends with. Peter Post won the most amount of races on the track with Patrick Sakou. He's just an absolute living legend.
And a fantastic name, Peter Post.
Yeah, Peter Post. He won Roubaix. He won so many races. It's not funny. When he used to take Panasonic Tour de France, the words that came out of his mouth were, if we don't win 5 stages of this year's Tour de France, like, it's not worth going. Like, they wanted every year, they were like 5 stages minimum is a pass mark for a Dutch team in the Tour de France. So,
gee, that standard's somewhat shifted in the last years.
Jan Raas, when I was on Rabobank, which is what Jumbo is, it's just changed about 17 sponsors since then. You know, he was a raging alcoholic, and I remember this guy coming up in the team car. He was drunk in the team car.
Driving the team car?
Oh, yeah, he's drunk all the time. But the guys used to drive up and just smash the side of the door and, you know, just swear in Dutch, get on the front, you fuckers. You know, it's just completely, you know, just psycho. So, like, this guy he came in just at the end of them. So what the world was 20 years ago when he started, because he was a sport director when I was racing in 1995. So he's been around so long with Quickstep. So now he's had the introduction of female women's cycling.
Whoa, he hasn't handled that.
So that
well.
is, for him, is like, he just doesn't think, you know, cycling's ready for female sport. And the guy just isn't ready. He's living in, like, still in 1995 world.
Is there hope for him? Like, do you think he's going to
if he wants to stay in the
around?
sport, if he wants to stay in the sport, I think he'll have to.
Yeah.
But
I think he needs a media advisor. Or
that's the thing, though.
something.
I don't reckon he can deal with that. I don't reckon he can deal with that at all. Like 2023, I don't think that's possible for him, because he still thinks, you know, we should be winning we're the best team in the classics, you know, which they're not now.
So when I was racing, the women's teams were still pretty small. I mean, what was your like, we had a bit of overlap in our careers, but you started about 8 years earlier than I did. What was women's cycling like in your days? Just for reference. Right, there wasn't any.
No, but there was some before that. Like, there used to be Liz Heppel and Kathleen Shannon.
Yeah, we had like the glory days when it first got introduced to the Olympics. But our teams were pretty small, and so it really mattered who the head honcho was, because you were so closely connected to them, because there just wasn't any structure in the middle. And if you had a douche canoe like Lefevre at the top, it was hell. And there are still a few. And I see some of them walking around still in women's cycling, and it makes my skin crawl to think that they're still in the sport tormenting people. But for the men's team, there's a lot more riders, there's a lot more staff in the middle. Like, are you really affected by the big boss, or can you kind of make it background noise and just get on with it?
Well, I mean, it's just those real characters like Lefevre are the ones who have put more importance on themselves than their team.
Well, does Alaphilippe care about what he's saying about him in the media? Or
I don't think he does, because he can go to 17 other teams.
Yeah, right.
Whereas the little people have to just bite it. Do you know what I mean? They just got to chew down and just get on with it. Whereas the other guys can say, I'll just, you know, so I got 6 teams that want me.
So maybe it's actually not loyalty that keeps some people around. It's almost a lack of options or a power imbalance.
Well, isn't that just kind of like how society is now? You can't speak up because, you know, you might get fired, you know.
I know.
I was listening to something the other day. Someone said all lives matter, and they were fired from their job. Like, come on. It's just, you know, you got to... So anyway, but I don't need Patrick Lefevre, because I can say whatever I want about him.
You've got your own.
But I will say, I mean, I don't like the guy, but I mean, he's running an exceptional program, and in Belgium, you need those characters to bring the big dollars in. So
and
I know that
successful at that, right?
You know, like Lotto, I've got a fantastic program. So
they do.
Well, I was going to say Lotto Soudal, but they've changed now. But Lotto,
Lotto Destiny.
Yes,
they are now. Yeah. Remembering the good old days where it was Lotto Predictor, which I believe was a pregnancy test.
Yes.
I think they were trying to cross-market to the female
Yes.
audience
Well, I was on
one.
that team as well, but
Yes.
not Lotto pregnancy test. I was on Lotto Davidamon, which was 2005, 2006. with Robbie.
Yes, some good multivitamins.
Gating.
Speaking of Lotto Destiny, I nearly said Sudal there, they've got a young rider, Arnaud De Lie. Everybody's chatting about him. Before Omloop, everybody was chatting about him and will he deliver on the talent that, the local rumours say he will. Now, he got second in Omloop after stacking it, no less, in a race where the team dynamics with Jumbo, second was almost the best he could hope for. But there was a pic of him riding up the Gerardsbergen in a big ring while half of the fellas were walking. He's clearly an ox. Like, he's clearly very, very strong to be able to do that. But does that not show a little bit of inexperience to go up there? Like, that's a bit unnecessary.
Yeah.
Is that...
There's no reason for him to do that.
No. But will he be called out on that? Like, will the team be saying to him, you can make these little adjustments and have a big improvement?
Yeah, I mean, I lived 7K from Gerardsbergen. That was our training route. So I've been up it 100 times. Anyone who's riding up there is an absolute freak.
Have you walked up there?
Or an idiot. No, I haven't walked up there. So that's one thing I haven't done. Or the Koppenberg, for that matter. I haven't walked up
Mind
that.
you, if a rider like you is walking up it, I feel sorry for the other 3/4 of the peloton who don't have the same power.
Yeah, but this kid's a freak. I mean, he won 9 or 10 races as a Neo pro last year, mostly in the bunch sprint. So it'll be interesting to see whether he goes into that Boonen sphere. So there's lots of good sprinters out there. I can name 15 right now who are as fast as him.
Caleb then?
Oh, I don't think Caleb has to be worried about anything quite yet. I don't think they'll take this kid to the Tour de France for bunch sprints. They'll just keep him in the classics. So for him, I'm interested to see whether he can be that next step. Where Boonen used to be a good sprinter and then started getting, second in his first Paris-Roubaix, so he was next level, right? It was one of the best classic riders of our generation. The next one will be if he rides in the front in a race called Haarlebaker, which is a 200k version of Tour of Flanders. It's generally the week before, and I can guarantee you the top 10 in Haarlebaker will be in top 10 in Tour of Flanders with maybe one Italian and one French guy chucked in, because that's your benchmark. If he rides in the front in Haarlebaker, watch out for the classics for the next 10 years, because I think you'll see him be the next classics guy, and I can guarantee you Lefebvre has tried to get him already. And I was reading a story this morning about how Stéphane Hulot is trying to get him on a long term and get more money for him. Because
especially for him, because they don't want to lose
him. Just for him. So their budget's tapped. They know this kid's going to be in the next things. They're actually saying it in the press. We need more money for this kid. We think we got something special. So that's pretty cool that they're actually going to go and try and extra money. But he's a freak. And Matt Rice, who was in our program in ARA Skip Capital, was on the team. He was in the development lotto team, and he's much loved. They love the kid. All the staff members and all the other riders think he's a freak. So Matt Rice didn't continue on with them this year, but they speak very highly of him.
So. Certainly one to watch. And Thomas de Gent also overnight said that he reminds him of a very young Peter Sagan. So to the kind of classics away from the straight sprint. That might be alluding to that a little bit as well from a teammate. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, when Sagan started, was freakish, always has, still is right now. Probably doesn't even train and does really well. He's probably over it, Sagan, right now. But, definitely that next step. I can't wait to see what he does in the classics, because he's going to win bunch sprints everywhere he goes.
Yes. So. Now, you loved your classics, Hank. And in preparation for today's episode, our very dedicated research team, which is to say Merksy out in the back, did a little bit of digging on the interwebs, Hank. And look, we found a few interesting little things from your time.
Here we go.
On the scene from your young days, Rabobank. Tell us what we're looking at in this picture.
That's a Jumbo
Hank.
Visma team there.
Yeah.
Right?
So
That's where it all started.
how old are you, Henk, here in your Rabobank photo? And this is
that's
for postcards.
That's second year pro. These are postcards. Yeah, you used to get postcards back in the day. Yeah, take the team photos.
Oh, and here's another one.
Yeah, that was GAN 1998. Still got the middle part going on. I'm surprised they don't have the piercing in the eyebrow. There was one there.
Well, now this is a special one here. This is Credit Agricole from when you were Australian champion, autographed no less.
Yes.
A postcard, beautiful portrait of you. I don't know how to describe what's going on with that facial hair.
Yeah, the do I at this
Other
stage.
than it appears like your razor was blunt in a few areas.
No, I must have seen a Zorro movie or something.
It is very Zorro-esque.
Hang on, is that your card, Kate? Because it looks as is that your card?
No.
Did I sign that for you?
Well, no. However, we found this on a website in Belgium, Holland, sorry. I think it was Holland or Belgium, selling it. And I can confirm, well, no, €5, thank you. We have bid. We are the highest bidder so far. We've got 3 days to find out whether they're going to post it to us or not. But we're hoping in all our memorabilia here. But it's not as authentic, Henk.
No, that's not. I can't believe it's signed too.
About that. Yeah, look at that. Yeah. €5. Bargain, we reckon.
Yeah.
So Mercksy's on the hunt for some good memorabilia there.
Oh, well, you just got to be careful what's on the internet, you know. Like, there's so much stuff on the internet.
Yes, caution there. And I'd also note that you seem to have an affinity for a lot of bleach in your locks over the years.
There has been a couple. There has been a couple of times where I may have actually just shaved the head or done... actually, that year...
Oh, here's a nice one, Henk. This is you from your Davidamon Lotto days, also signed. That's beautiful. Frosted tips, is that what we call it?
Actually, I'm not. Yeah, it may have been. Do you remember Sun In? You used to get it at chemists. Yeah. I think I may have put some Sun In, and it's just coming out.
Like it's
like this is January. Remember, like at the end of January, you go after the Aussie Sun. So I may have put some Sun In, and you know the darks were coming.
It's just a spray you put in that's like a little bit of bleach and lemon juice.
Yes,
and
it smells horrific, and it looks terrible. And generally, it comes out orange.
Well, look, hopefully we'll get that postcard in here in the bunker, so that can become a little piece of our history in here. Speaking of funny things,
mate, you've totally stitched me up on these photos.
I did. I'm sorry,
thanks, Kate, but don't worry. I'm sure there's going to be lots of things on the internet of you somewhere along the line.
Don't.
Hey. Oh, there we go.
Oh, okay. There's a nice one of me. Yep, righto. Okay.
What team's that one?
All right. So here is my postcard from Ton van Bemmelen Sports, which is probably good it's not in colour because it was like an electric green colour. And actually, I've got a funny story about this team. This was 2004 when I then took this kit. Like when you go to the Olympics, you ride on your own bike, right?
Yeah.
It's not that they give us a road bike. And my bike was also this crazy bright green colour, and Peter Brock was our team mentor that year. So every Olympic team you have somebody really cool. It was John Eales in 2008 come along, who's essentially like your mascot, right? Like they dot around trying to keep everybody happy. So I was really young and I thought that the team mascot essentially would be really nice to everybody. And Peter Brock, lovely fella, but he said to me, "That's got to be the ugliest bike I have ever seen." And that was all he said to me. And I was absolutely gutted. And from that day on...
You didn't like the bike?
I hated the bike. Every time I got on it, I was like, oh, this is pretty bad, actually. Here's another one. Oh, gosh.
They come out of the woodwork. So I told you to be careful on the internet. Everything pops up. They got the old Google.
Happy for you to stop Googling, Merksy. I don't think I can throw any shade on your hair colour based on the array of different hair colours.
Is that red?
Oh, yeah. A good ginger colour, I would say. Dark ginger? I don't know. Yeah, back to the sun in.
Back to the sun. Exactly.
Well, they're like
another one.
Oh, here, see now.
See, there you go.
Looks
You
nothing
signed
like
it.
me. This is my Australian champion when I was riding for Nuremberg postcard. And the funny thing about this whole year, and did you have white nicks when you were Australian champion?
No, I did not.
So
Specifically.
I know, they made me ride the entire season with white nicks with green and gold stripes around the bottom.
In Europe with cow shit on the roads, the whole lot. It would have been horrific.
The whole season I was apologising to people in the bunch because I knew that they were going to be see-through. I knew that they were horrendous. But yes,
I never wore white necks.
Well, my signature hasn't changed in a decade.
So is that
there's
online?
Something fun.
Have anyone bid on that
I guess
online?
it is. Yeah, Merksy, can we get a bid online?
€2.70.
So $5 for yours.
No, €5. That's $9 Aussie. Yours. Oh,
yeah,
God.
I get it. And before we move on, we've got a beautiful one of you and Robbie McEwen in the Rabobank days.
The idea behind that. So I was supposed to be Robbie's lead-out man. So they thought they'd get a photo of me leading Robbie out in a studio while I'm on the bike. So he's pushing me like he's looking like he's pushing me.
Yeah, I don't know that the creative team really nailed this one. It is a funny photo though, and he looks like the kid out of the Wonder Years.
Yes, he does.
Actually.
And I look like Cody Simpson.
Cody Simpson. We're going to put all of these up on our socials because they are pretty funny. Good old back in the day. Speaking of things that maybe don't belong in the trophy cabinet, Dylan Van Baarle, when he won Omloop, have you seen the trophy?
I haven't seen the trophy. I'll have to look that
one up. It is an absolute... I don't even know. It's an atrocity. Can you describe... We've got a picture up here in the studio. Can you describe what this trophy is?
I think a lot of bent spokes in an old candlestick. They call them candelabras?
Yeah, candelabra, yeah.
A candelabra with a broken... They've just got some old spokes and then put a bike in the middle of it and then put a ring at the top.
It's atrocious.
It is atrocious. But you know what? Everyone's talking about it.
This is true. Now, Dylan Van Baarle and his teammate Tish Benoot both took Classics wins on the weekend. Tish Benoot, great story. He broke his neck back in August 2022 in a training accident. For him to be back and winning is incredible and sensational. Bearing in mind that Wout van Aert isn't even there yet, how good is Jumbo? Like, are they just the absolute team to beat, or
how scared are everyone?
Yeah.
How scared is everyone right now of the Classics coming up? I wouldn't read into it too much because openings weekend is generally there's a lot of in our day used to be called Volker Omloop Het Newsblad, which Dylan one used to be called Omloop Het Volk. So we used to say, everyone does a big winter and come out really good in openings weekend and then fall on their face in the Classics. I can't see that happening with them. Van Aert's sick, so he's their, unopposed team leader. But to win both, it's pretty massive. But they were opportunistic wins, and I say that. I mean, that's a great win. Don't get me wrong, but when you get to the Classics, it's all about. And when I'm talking Flanders-Roubaix and Wevelgem, Liège, Amstel, all those races, it's all legs. It's got nothing to do with who the strongest team is at that stage. It's just man on man in those races, and that's different. That's different to be like guys are just starting to kind of come into form, and they're trying to, their year's based around 1 week, and that's Flanders, Ghent, Wevelgem, Roubaix for the Classics. They're the 3 King Cobble Classics, and they want to be good at that time, not now.
Well, speaking of the King Cobble Classics, it's easy from this opening weekend to say, look, Jumbo are almost unbeatable, but it's been 26 years since they've won a cobbled classic in any regard. As you said, it used to be Rabobank before it was Jumbo, but any iteration of that team, 26 years since Rolf Sorensen won in Vlaanderen. I believe you were there on the day.
I was. I actually, I was about 10 seconds off the back of that group that he was in, and I had a teammate in, so I had to go across on my own. And I got caught with 1K to go, and Rolf won it that day. And he did a deal too, by the way, with Franco Ballerini.
Ooh.
Yeah, so...
Tell us about that.
So he was away. So it was Franco Ballerini, Rolf Sorensen, Frederik Monkesen. Monkesen was in Gan. He was my teammate. He was up the road, so I couldn't chase, and I had really good legs. But Fred was our sprinter, and we thought he's going to win it. But Rolf spoke better Italian than Frederik spoke Flemish or Italian. So they were training partners, Ballerini and Sorensen. So the deal was done, and Rolf won't mind me saying this because, it's 26 years ago, and he still won it. So, but yeah, they did a little deal at the finish.
Well,
they spoke
like, are we
better
talking
Italian.
what are we talking? Like a small Mercedes, 20,000? Like,
I have heard that. I have another story after that, but yeah, I don't know whether it was a dollar amount, but I won't chase you if you don't chase me, because they all knew that Fred was quicker. Ooh. Fred Monkerson. So, but yeah, anyway, I run 11th, but that was a bad day for us as a team because we should have won it, and I couldn't chase because he was there, and then I got caught, and
memorable.
About 26 years ago, it's kind of crazy, right? Especially if you had like Van Bon and Decker and all those in my era to not win a Cobble Classic. I think it's a matter of time.
Maybe it's a bit of a hoodoo on them. We'll see how they go. It's interesting to consider also the team dynamics because it's happening with the women as well. So Lotte Kopecky won Het Nieuwsblad for the women for SD Works. First time a Belgian lady has won, so that was fantastic for the Belgians and for her. And there was a bit of chat beforehand because they've just brought Lorena Wiebes into the team, the most successful sprinter from last season. And everyone's been saying, how's this going to work? Now, Wiebes won the next day in a women's race called Hageland, which is, essentially KVK, but for the women, but it's a big race. So SD Works also dominated that weekend, and they're kind of favourites for Strade Bianchi. But when you've got so much talent in a team, Jumbo, it's happening at the moment. SD Works is happening at the moment. We saw some disastrous occurrences in the past in teams with too many cooks in the kitchen. I want to say Michael Matthews and Simon Gerrans. That experiment didn't really work. We could also look at Froome and Wiggins in Sky. That didn't really work. Are they on a collision course here, SD Works and Jumbo?
No.
No?
No.
So how does it get managed?
More cards to play.
More cards to play.
More cards to play in the final. And unless it's like... Generally, I mean, coming to the finish of a race, you'd rather have your teammate there than someone else on another team who's going to chase you. I mean, they're not going to chase down. And they're two different riders, right? They're two different riders.
Well, I feel like in Jumbo you've got two of each.
Not right.
Well, yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just think that, like, you saw what Wout van Aert did in the Tour last year with Vingegaard. One of the best evers of Tour de France history was last year with Van Aert riding the front and dropping Pogacar. That was seriously one of the best evers. I mean, it works for them. So he knows, he's like, I'm going to win the green, I'm going to win 4 stages, I'm going to help you in the mountains, but, how about you lend me your GC guys to ride the front for a while I win 4 stages in the first week? You know what I mean? Like, that works for them because they're both best at what they do. They're different riders. So when you've got, Kopecky is a different rider than Wiebes. So, they'll get their opportunities. And, there'll be times where they'll have to just suck it up, but that's what makes the DS important, right?
Yeah, your job's really important.
It's not fun sometimes, I'm telling you, especially with selection, because you've got to leave people out. It's like, no, you're not coming, because otherwise, here's your chance this week. Next week, it's his chance. Next week, it's your chance. And sometimes you pick both of them, and then I have to say, listen, we're riding for Wiggo today. Sorry, Blake, but, he's the fastest guy. You're stronger, but it's going to be a bunch and you're leading him out. But when it's the next time, you've got to compromise. You got to compromise and say, listen, all right, you're not getting over the climb today, Wiggo, so you're bringing everything back for the first 60K, and then when you get at the arse, then the other guys can help him. There's two. And I suppose that's why you got to know your riders so well. You've got to organise them in different phases in the races.
And they have to trust you too, so that even if they're disappointed, they know that you're seeing the full picture.
Exactly.
And making the good call.
Yeah, and that's what's important, that communication at the team meetings and around how your year looks and where you're going to get your opportunities. So when you talk about these possible scenarios, generally within the team, within 4 walls, it's like, no, this is where you're going to be good. That's where he's going to be good. This is your time. You're more suited to this, and they just break it down.
Win together, lose together.
But when you get the real egos is when they go apart. Like when, okay, no, I'm way faster than him. It's bullshit that I have to ride for him today. That last 1 year.
Yeah,
They don't hang.
Yeah.
They're gone. They go different ways. And you saw that. You see that in a lot of cases. I mean, Wiggins was coming to the end of his, Brad Wiggins was coming to the end of his when Froome was coming up. So, they're always going to back Chris because he's the next new thing. But there was a time where they'd say, hey, Froome, come back. Easy, Tiger.
Yes. Oh, I remember where they had to essentially ban their wives from going on Twitter because Michelle Froome and Kath Wiggins were getting into it on Twitter on the other's behalf.
That's good.
Look, it can be entertaining. And speaking of which, have you seen that Netflix are bringing out a Tour de France documentary?
Can't wait.
Can't wait. What are we
Can't
going to
wait to see that.
Are we going to see some nitty gritty? Do you think?
Yeah, I reckon we will. I think the Netflix documentary, I think the cycling diehards are going to love it because they're going to see more. And you'll see a lot more tactical stuff in there. But I think this is just going to bring a whole new level of spectator to our sport, like what Drive to Survive did for F1. I think it's going to do for cycling.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, to be honest. As a director, do you want more of this? Do you want the cameras in your face?
Are
you
all the time.
Happy? Yeah?
You need this. We need this for our sport to grow. If we don't have this mainstream, we're going to be stuck in 1978 where every team has to get their own money. This is the way through for us to get, big corporate
proper
spot
funding.
World in having a proper federation that can fund our sport, this kind of stuff. This is what's really going to bring the money into our sport, I reckon.
What do the riders think of it? Do they mind having cameras all up in their face, or?
I don't think riders would care. I mean, obviously not in the bathroom or some, and they would have had to edit a lot too.
Yeah.
I think there would have been some contract signs saying, hey, listen, we don't mind you coming in, but we want to have authority over what's shown and we need to sign it off.
Yeah.
Because, every team has their little tricks that they don't want other teams to know, and they'll make sure that that's adhered to. Otherwise, that'll stop. But I don't think it will because the sport really needs it.
Unreal. I'm really looking forward to that. Before we move on to what's coming up, because there's some crackers just around the corner, did you see Adam Yates on Jabal Hafeet, I think it's called? Yeah, it is. Broke Pogacar's record by 4 seconds up that climb. People are talking about it like, whoa, how good is Adam Yates? But all I saw was effectively that he got motor paced until just near the end and then just had to do a little bit of an effort. So on paper he broke the record, but...
How many minutes did he lose before?
Well, he lost a minute in the crosswind.
Only a minute?
51 seconds or something.
So no pressure all race, just stay on the wheel of Evenepoel at the bottom and then try and offload him with 350 to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big difference than riding GC and having that pressure all week. And the kids those two boys, and I call them boys because they're younger than me, so they are boys, Adam and Simon, they are just, Yorkshire Terriers. They love riding uphill fast and, I don't think they'll ever, win the Tour de France any day. But, they are certainly incredible bike riders when it goes uphill. Their power to weight's exceptional, but
they're really pure climbers, aren't they?
Pure climbers, yeah.
I guess
can't time trial out of a wet paper bag.
Good saying.
But limit your losses. I mean, not horrific, but they're not time trialists. And guys like Evenepoel and Pogacar and Plapp and those guys, they can do
can time trial. It's interesting, I think, to see also, like UAE, it's their home tour. They would have been a little bit nervous going into the end without a lot to show for it.
Exactly. I mean, when you got Pogacar on your team, really, you don't need to do well in the home garden, do you? When you've got literally the second biggest sporting event on earth, and he's won two of them.
Yeah, this is true.
Like, so for them, it's just like, we're just going to put a race on in our little desert.
In our little desert.
In our little desert here, and might have to. I was pretty. Actually, I'll make a point up about this. The racing was great. I reckon there was 15 people at the finish. That for me was a real downer. I'm looking at it going, all right, we've got some camels, some sand, and we've got some, like fences and a big gantry at the finish, and it's on television, but no one's there.
Was it 15 spectators or people? Like, does that include camels?
I reckon half of them were the camera operators and the commissaires and everything else. I mean, yeah, it's
made for television.
Made for television, and like that's the difference between the sport in Saudi Arabia or in the Middle East, and where even in Australia and Europe, it's just people love it. Over there, they don't know what's going on. What is this bike thing?
Yes.
What is this bike riding thing?
They're the two ends of the spectrum, aren't they?
Yeah.
So coming up, Strade Bianchi. I love Strade Bianchi. It's such a romantic, beautiful race on the white and the gravel. I know, I love it, really.
Yeah.
And also
romance. I never thought about it being romance.
It is. I do. I guess if you saw Lulu's fall last year, there's nothing particularly romantic about that.
One. Yeah.
Why is it not a monument?
Because it's not old enough.
Okay. So who decides that? Is that so it will never be a monument?
Yeah, I think it will. I think it'll be another Italian monument, but I mean...
Who actually decides that? Is that the UCI?
No, I don't think there's actually... That term monument is what journalists call them.
Right, okay.
There's no such thing as a monument except for what... we call it that in the cycling world.
Maybe that's why when I was trying to research who gets to decide, I couldn't find an answer.
It's just folklore, right? I mean, Melbourne to Warrnambool should be a monument. It's the second oldest race on earth.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But, it's kind of an afterthought. But Liège-Bastogne-Liège is the oldest race in the world. So Lombardy's been around since 1940, 50, and the others are all, 80, 90, 100 years old. So maybe that's what it is. But
it's a cool race.
It will be. It will be a monument, especially if they keep the roads as they are in Tuscany.
Which is to say in terrible condition.
Well, that's what you want.
Which makes it interesting.
Well, there is a law in France that they are not allowed to repair the roads in northern France.
Truly?
Yeah.
Like the cobbles and...
They are not allowed to. They can't do it. They have to get approval, and they can only remake it with the same material.
That's cool.
So you can recobble it, but I love that race.
All right, so who's going to be successful at Strade Bianchi? Who do you think? Because we're missing a few. We've got no Wout. He's not back yet. Podge isn't coming back to defend.
Well, is Van der Poel coming?
He is.
Well, so he's the favourite and they're going to ride. But, anyone
from Jumbo? Maybe Laporte?
Yeah, well,
Tish Benoot?
Tish Benoot has won it already.
He has, yeah.
So, I
think he and Van der Poel are the only previous winners on the start list. But I'd need to go over the start list again.
Yeah, I haven't gone over the start list, but you can't go wrong with those three names. There's obviously and Alaphilippe is there.
He is, yeah.
So he's back.
Yeah, a year after. Comes in with good form too.
Yeah, I mean, if Van der Poel comes to the finish, I can't see him getting beaten unless Biniam Jamay's there, which he's got his measure. But
Monty Gobert, they've been successful this season. They've had a pretty good crack at it so far. They are the
most underrated team in the peloton.
Is that because they've got the worst kit?
No, well, it's crazy, right, how these small teams, or you used to think they're all small teams, have like 15 sponsors. But, such an underrated team. Geez, they're good. And Alpecin, I love Alpecin. How successful. I just did Tour de Langkawi last year with the boys where Craig Wiggins won a stage, and they won 5. They won 5 stages. It just goes unnoticed how many races they win. So it's the same thing with Wanty. They win all the time. They keep winning. They're great. And maybe that's the downfall of Quick-Step. I still call it Quick-Step.
Oh, yeah,
that's
it's
not
hard.
even their name, but De Koning Soudal, is it?
No. Yes,
different?
it is. It is. You're right.
De Koning Soudal, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the downfall of their class. It's over. The classics are over for them. No, I mean...
See what Lulu can do on his comeback. Well, and in the women, Kopecky, she's on form. She won last year. She's kind of a natural. Annemiek van Vleuten now, I'm really curious on your take on this. I don't know why, but I take a lot of her comments with a bit of a grain of salt. And I'll explain why. She is by far and above the most successful current rider in the women's peloton in terms of consistency. And that's even above riders like Marianne Vos, who is well considered the GOAT.
She really took her mantle, hasn't she?
She has. She really has. So last week in Omloop, she had a flat and that ruled her out of the race. But the comment at the end of the race was, I got a flat because I hit a pothole, almost as if I would have won, but the pothole got in my way and it almost detracting a little bit from Kopecki's win. It kind of bothered me because I thought everybody else avoided the pothole. And you got, am I just being a bit of a cow there?
I mean, it happens to everyone, so I don't know why she would even talk like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit sceptical, but well, she'll be there too. And Kasia Nieuwedoma, she's an interesting one. She's been on the podium 4 times, but she hasn't won it. Is that like a hex, or does that make you hungrier for it?
I think it's maybe the way she races.
Yeah.
Or has she been beaten by 4 different people, or the same one each time?
She's been beaten by 3 different people in that 4.
Well, I mean, if she's... That's why it's so good to be fast, right?
Yeah.
When you're someone who can sprint, you have so many more options. Like, if you're not a sprinter, it sucks to be you. Like, if you're strong.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a strong rider and you can't sprint, you're like, oh, you know what, I was, 15 times in the first 5, but I can't sprint. So, like, if you're super strong, you're right away. If you come in the group and you always get beaten, it just sucks to not have that sprint on you. And you always, that's why they're so valued, fast riders. So sprinters, they can win 10 a year. I mean, how many climbers win 10 races a year?
Yeah, not many, right?
No, it sucks to be climbers.
Well, friend of the show, Rachel Nayland, I think, holds the ominous record of the most top 10s in a World Tour race without getting a victory.
Oh.
On one hand, gee, how impressive that is.
She's been at the top of her game for a long time.
But on the other hand, how frustrating.
Not been able to throw the hands in the air
I
and blow
know.
kisses.
I want to take her out on the road and teach her how to sprint. Although, in fairness, I don't know that I'd be any chop these days to be able to do it.
That makes 2 of us.
I
do it on a motorbike.
Oh, that's a good idea.
On the motor scooter, and then, teach them.
I did see this morning that AG Tour are coming out at Strade Bianchi, Henk, with these old-looking Castelli-type denim design shorts.
Oh, God.
What's that about? Literally, it looks like there's like a denim pocket on it.
It's like a marketer's dream, that stuff, isn't it?
But do you think it can get worse than the
Carrera.
poo brown nicks that they normally rock? Like Carrera, like the old...
That was kind of cool back in the day, in the 80s, like when Pantani was racing then.
Everything comes back.
Mid-90s, Like, I don't know. I mean, I think that I'm not in the marketing space, but I reckon it's a great move marketing-wise because now we're talking about them.
Yes.
So, and then all the photos, they're gonna be talking about, these crazy denim shorts that, the whole new generation hasn't seen.
We're just suckers for the marketing, aren't we? Before we move on to a few other little quirky stuff, I just want your opinion on Pog versus Jonas. They've both changed previous years' race programs for their tour warm-up now, so we'll see them head-to-head very soon in tours. What do you think? Is it good to see them head-to-head early on in the season, or do you want to wait until the tour?
Yeah, it's always good to see 2 champions like that going early. I wouldn't read anything into it, though. I wouldn't read anything into it at all. Like, we're so far away from the last week in July because that's the only thing that matters for those 2 guys.
Good perspective, but we like reading into things, Henk, because then we've got stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
So you're saying if Vingegaard, for example, just dominates and Podge loses 10 minutes, not that I think that would happen, that big deal? Or vice versa? No big deal?
No, I reckon it's great that the champions are racing now, and you have to be racing to be in that really good nick, but they're just fully into their builds, and they're probably at different times. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't read into it too much. What I want to see is whether how Pogacar goes in his time trials this year.
Ooh, you think that's a big
indicator? Yeah, I think that'd be. I mean,
well, there's a team's time trial
well.
in Paris-Nice that I think he was wanting to sharpen his teeth on a bit. I mean, that team's not necessarily known to be gun teams time trialers, are they?
Well, they've got to be stronger this year in the Tour if they want to come up against the world's best. I mean, last year, seriously, Jumbo just took the piss. Like, that was awesome. So good.
All indications are that they're going to do it again too. So, speaking of Jumbo, did you see Jonas Vingegaard in the drone shot in El Gran Camino? They had this fantastic drone shot. It was buzzing all around him.
I didn't. I'm not going to lie to you and say I did. I didn't see it, but I'll have to check it out.
My question is, he came incredibly close to the rider. Do you think like it's cool to have these new shots great?
Hang on, was it on top or next to?
Next to.
How
and in
far
front
away?
And on top. Oh, right up close.
So I think there is a rule somewhere. I'm going to have to look it up. And I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to have a drone any on top.
Well, certainly in Australia. Certainly in Australia, that's the rule. I mean, there's been a lot of online debate about how could this happen in terms of regulation and everything like that. But just as a broad rule, like my view on it is that would, if I was in time trial mode and I had anything just buzzing around me like that, it would be quite off-putting from a sporting perspective, even forgetting the safety.
Yeah, I mean, he probably doesn't. He's probably just those time trial helmets on and disc wheels and stuff and the wind in the helmet.
He
doesn't hear. He wouldn't hear it.
Well, he's a pretty quirky character. In the presentation afterwards with the champagne, he took the foil wrapper off the champagne and folded it neatly and put it in his back pocket, ostensibly to recycle it.
Did he actually say that he was going to recycle?
Yeah.
Oh.
I liked that. Like, I thought that was quite cool.
That's good. It's great they've put litter zones too in bike races now.
Yeah.
Every race has a litter zone and you get chucked out now if you're chucking gel wrappers out into the bush, that's awesome. Every race that I've done for the last almost 2 years now has had a litter zone. So is really good because, I mean, I littered for 20 years, like in bike races, and imagine the amount of plastic wrappers that are just lying around for me. Imagine, the other 50,000 that did it. So
you got to lessen that environmental impact. A couple of other funny things that stood out to me this week. On a positive front, EF Easy Post, they've won more races so far this year than they won in the entire season last year.
What's the change?
I don't know. That's pretty good, though. I think somebody's going to be happy with that. Possibly.
A new psychologist. Have they got new sport directors?
Yeah, maybe they've banned a few people from being on the inner circle. New bikes, maybe. They're fancy. They look good.
I don't think bikes have anything to do with it.
Unless Peter Brock tells you that your bike is shit, and then it does.
Maybe they hypnotise them over the summer and just,
Indeed.
You will win. You will win.
Now, to finish us off this week, Henk, what I love about social media these days, we get more access to the athletes and their personalities. They can pass on some really handy tips around training or nutrition. I'm not sure Geraint Thomas has really read the memo on that. Donuts is what he's role modelling on social media. Big old donut in his mouth. Is this what you feed your athletes post-race?
Hang on. Was this at a team race or was this him training at home?
It was training.
Good on him. Get a donut in you, mate. He's probably done 180K in the cold weather, like can't feel his hands, he's hunger flat. He's like, I want a donut and I'm going to eat it. And I'm putting it on social media, so get stuffed.
I like it too. Fanta and Mars bars were my hunger flat I need to get home go-to. So
100%. If I'm in trouble, I go for the Black Doctor, the Coke, and for sure 100%. So I love it that he does. He's human.
I love
imagine him
that
just
too,
drinking mineral water.
Yeah.
And a music park.
Yes.
No one wants to see that.
They take themselves a little bit too seriously. And I noticed that he's just not in his beautiful Oakleys anymore, Henk. But What are
Sun
those
Gods.
he's wearing?
Yeah, Sun Gods. They're fantastic. They're our sponsor, actually. I mean, I'll talk them up because
Coincidence?
they're our sponsor. And I'll talk them up because they are our sponsor, but I'll talk them up because they're actually really good and they do custom and they're a new company who've done really well and they're really easy to deal with and they're not as expensive as Oakley.
Oh, there you go.
They
Boom
look
tish.
as cool. So, yeah, tick, tick and tick.
Yeah,
there.
well, let's see if we can get Dunkin' Donuts on board with Sun God and everybody is a winner.
Dunkin' Donuts. Actually, that's not a bad one.
That's a pretty good one, isn't it?
That'll
I
be
reckon
my
they'd
next
make
target.
Good post-race fuel.
Wendy's.
They're coming to Australia. That's not necessarily good news. Now, before I let you go, we're a little bit out from it yet, but I need your tip on who's going to take the cobble at Para-Roubaix. This is a race that you have almost made a fairy tale for Australian cycling fans. The images of you in Roubaix, you covered in mud, you look like you're having a horrendous time. No helmets. Oh, my gosh, that makes my skin crawl. Those
crazy,
little
right?
Sinelli
Spinacci bars,
that's what they were called, the little half aero bars. You loved this race, and to a degree the race loved you, even though you had some good ones, you had some tough ones. Who's going to win it this year? I feel like it's a pretty open field with so much talent coming through.
Well, I'm going to stick with the curse not being broken.
So no Jumbo, that's Jumbo out.
Van der Poel is going to win it.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Wouldn't you?
Now,
you know I was teammates with his dad.
I do know that.
Yeah, last year was my first year in
Oh,
95.
I thought there were a few more years overlap from
Nah,
that.
95 was his last year with us. But I would love to see him win that. I hear he's not going to race for that much longer.
Ooh.
So I would love to see him win that. But, I mean,
I would too,
you
yeah.
throw a blanket over about 10 guys. You know, that rivalry is, we're so lucky to be in this era, those two. With Van Aert and Van der Poel. We're just so lucky to have those two in the sport. And Van Aert's going to win it one day.
At some point.
At some point he'll win it. He may win it in the next 3 years. You know, he might do a Burnham in the next 5 years. He's that good. I'd love to see Van der Poel win it though.
I'd love to see that too. And
not anyone of Patrick Lefebvre's boys.
No, I'd be happy with that too.
Even though they had a lot of bad luck last year.
Yeah, well, look, very quickly we discovered last week this wonderful UCI rule where if there is a dead heat, there's provision for a race-off, 1 kilometre standing start, first to the line wins. If it's on a velodrome, that also...
Really?
Yeah.
Like Roubaix, they'll do the last K again.
Yeah.
If it's
No, they do the last K on the velodrome. Yeah. Or as close to the number of laps on a velodrome. So can you imagine how epic that would be if Van der Poel and Van Aert, I mean, I'm living in like movie territory here, but cross the line, dead heat, and then kilo standing start race off. Oh, I'm drooling just thinking about it.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Henk, thank you so much for joining us.
My
huge
pleasure.
amounts of luck to ARA Skip Capital in your role there. And enjoy the classics from the couch as much as you can.
Yeah.
Next week, we are going to have so much to talk about, but we do have a very special episode for International Women's Day. I sat down with the wonderful Imogen Alton the other day, one of Australia's rising stars. She's got an incredible journey, so tune in for that one. And then maybe Joel will be healthy. Maybe I'll be calling you again next week, Henk. Who knows? But thank you for coming into the bunker. You're now firmly a friend of the Wheelhouse. And if we win the online auction for your card, you'll take pride of place here.
No, it's my pleasure anytime. I'm just down the highway, so I can come in and fill in for whenever.
Love it. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Wheelhouse, and we'll see you soon.
The Wheelhouse is produced at River City Studios for Listener and proudly supported by Champion System, Per Se and the Grow Getters Group. Our executive producer is Luke Merksy Mears, and the show is written and hosted by Joel Spreadborough and me, Kate Bates.